Welcome back to another edition of Kevin and Jason Show, presented by Cover One. I'm one of your hosts, Kevin Masseri, here with Jason Shannon. We'll be going through some great topics today. First 4 days of camp review. We're going to talk about the heating up position battles, get into some of those. And we're going to talk a little bit about the leading carries for the 2019 season, kind of how we see the carry situation splitting out. We got some great questions here on this show. And going to get into at least 6 or 7 of those. So, Jason, how are you today?
Sorry, it was good. I accidentally had it muted to start the show, so we're off to a great start. I'm great. I'm excited to talk about all this stuff. I'm interested in some of the Q&A questions, and of course, we did attend some camps, so I'm interested in getting into that with a little bit of inside knowledge for the people who aren't able to attend 9 a.m.s in Pittsburgh for 2 weeks.
It's tough. I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking 9:45 shows. A lot of them are practices. A lot of them are weekdays. I mean, you're talking about you got to get on the if you're not credentialed. I mean, you're talking about needing to find parking. You're talking about getting on the bus if that's your route. So it's challenging. And then you're talking about a situation on weekends that when you might be available, that it's packed there. I mean, it's busy. You're talking 2-3 rows deep along some portions, and the whole bleachers filled. So it's a challenge for people, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we were there not early, I'll say that, and the bleachers were already full. I think it started to get a little too hot for some people because that definitely is the most brutal place to be.
Yep.
And the whole practice setup with just the sun coming off the bleachers, and Saturday and Sunday both were pretty warm days. So we had to wait for some people to get up. We ended up getting pretty good seats on the 40-yard line and got to catch, probably the best view of practice that you can get because that far side from the back is really far. The other side, where there is no bleachers, is sort of a tough site. So you got to show up early. You got to stick through it. And you really don't know how many people are going to show up on a given day. I mean, I don't want to complain about the whole experience, but it is logistically, it's tough to get a front row view of your Bills unless you're willing to go there on 9 a.m. on a Wednesday, one of the few times that even those are available. So I enjoyed my experience overall, but yeah, it was definitely busy Sunday morning, that's for sure.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I mean, getting into it a little bit, into practice, saw. I mean, we had a sloppy offense. This was day 4 on Sunday. We saw a sloppy offensive performance, one that I believe they redid a couple of drills at one point. They made Isaiah McKenzie come back out and run a drill. They made Josh Allen missed a few throws. The defense mysteriously laughed. I don't know. Did they ever say what that was? Did they say that was just them stretching, or did they actually say they put them somewhere
Yeah,
else?
that could have been a break or something. It certainly seemed to coincide with a bad offensive stretch, so we had thought that maybe the defense was getting some sort of reward break or something, but I never saw anything official on that. It could have just been
We're gonna
whatever
call it
they
a
had
reward break.
planned.
I like reward
But
break.
but it did come like directly after again you said that they were making Isaiah McKenzie rerun a route, something that Josh Allen or one of the coaches didn't seem to like there. Not to pile on McKenzie because I'm sure that stuff that kind of stuff happens all the time, probably even more behind closed doors. But yeah, I would say overall I would say that the day wasn't poor offensively because I think Josh Allen ended up 12 for 16 in your unofficial stats,
Mhm.
up a buck 50 in yardage. But between the first drills that they were running that were looking a little off, and then him throwing a really terrible interception to Trey White on the first pass of the team section, it wasn't a good start. But I do think that they ended up worming themselves into it. Cole Beasley had a nice day. You could definitely see what they see in John Brown. Those are kind of the names that everybody has been saying in the weaponry have been the most outstanding performers, and those are the guys you want to be the most outstanding performers because you spent some money on them, and maybe some people thought that those were overvalued players based on their number production, but they've definitely shown that they're the guys stepping up right now as weapons so far through camp between the day that we saw and went to and the days before that from the reports that everybody has given, including the wonderful people at Cover One.
Yeah. Now, was there one specific? So, kind of talk about the 4 days in a whole here as we're on a break here on Monday and Tuesday. The show's coming, at you live on Monday. Is there anything you saw in the first 4 days specifically? Any position group sticking out to you? Anything that you specifically liked to date? And conversely, is there something you didn't like so far and that you're a little more nervous about?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have talked about receiver, and it is hard to not improve on what we had last year. But I just like in general the routes that they're running and the way that they're starting to utilize guys. John Brown seems to be getting utilized on a number of different routes. He's not going to just run down the field, and I think people kind of underestimated what his skill set was going to be because there are guys in the league that just run vertical, but I think he has a lot more nuance in his route running, and you can definitely see it in that. And even stuff that slightly shifts up things like your post patterns and such, where he's going to be able to utilize his speed. I think that's going to be important for the offense. And then Cole Beasley I don't think you got to see enough sort of underneath. And, we during practice, you saw the underneath, you saw the cross that went for the one-handed catch that, made the social media platforms and looked very good in person. He was running some of the chair routes. You're going to see some rub stuff. I think that he's going to be a very important part of the offense. It's going to open up things for the guys on the outside. It'll be interesting to see where Zay Jones fits in all of that. We haven't heard a lot about him in reports, and he was getting stretched out during the team portion of the day that we went to. I kind of wanted to see where he was going to fit in that offense because I think he was one of the people that was being utilized in those sort of underneath roles before, where maybe he's going to be playing some more outside receiver at this point, or he almost definitely is going to be. But I didn't get to see that on Sunday. It'll be interesting to see where he gets utilized, whether maybe Robert Foster fits into that mix at all. Is going to be an interesting situation because I think all of them have talent. And I don't think that McDermott saying that Robert Foster has to evolve, he wasn't really saying that in like an incendiary way. He was just saying like, look, you did it in year one. You got to, for 7 games, you got to go and get better this one. We have more talent around you. You're not competing with guys we signed off the street. You're competing with guys who are making $7-8 million a year. So I mean, I don't know if you want me to go to the part that I'm worried about.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
I mean, tight end is really thin right now. And I think that we really need a full camp with those guys to have them progress to see what we have. Because we didn't come in with any elite tight ends. We thought that Tyler Kroft was going to get the chance to be a tight end one. He's not going to have the opportunity to do that early on. And then guys that we're going to have to step up, your 2 most likely guys to be tight end one in this offense were going to be Kroom and Knox after him. And now they're both nursing injuries, and they may not be all that serious, but I think every practice day that you lose and repetition, those are free repetitions with the first string offense that maybe you wouldn't have had with Kroft and the Kroom wouldn't have had if Knox was in, or vice versa. So in training camp, sometimes you have to see it as a blessing, and you say, all right, well, now we get to see what Tommy Sweeney has, see if Lee Smith has anything in his legs. They made a signing today that I'm sure you'll get into, but I don't think he's just there to take reps at this point. So, I'm worried about it. My hope is that maybe we start to shift more towards it, where we're going to realize that maybe tight end's just not going to be something that we're going to be utilizing all that heavily in the receiving game this year, and maybe we start moving towards those modern concepts, like stuff that the 11 stuff that the Rams do, more underneath passing to set up Josh Allen in the longer game. So I don't know. Maybe it's by necessity we're going to start to make some changes, but right now, like we're not going to just suddenly come up with a 700, 800 yard tight end. They're just not going to have the time to be able to do that unless some kind of miracle happens. So
yeah, and I mean, the team just announced today the signing of tight end Kyle Carter, 6'4", 245 from Penn State. Now, he's just coming in basically off the injuries He's an athletic tight end. They have some good blockers in already, so they're kind of looking to get that athletic tight end. He spent time with Minnesota, the Giants, Seattle, and he was with the Bills last December on their practice squad before not getting picked up on a futures deal. I think in 2012 he was Big Ten team, all Big Ten team for Penn State. He had a really good freshman year, finishing his career with 84 catches for 4 touchdowns, and they're taking a little piece out of their linebacking depth to do so, cutting undrafted free agent Jawan Foggy, a guy that they wanted to add as an undrafted free agent. They took 2 undrafted free agent linebackers. The other one being Terrell Dodson, who has some. He was one with legal issues, right? Was that Dodson or Foggy? I forget.
It was Dodson.
So Dodson's still on the team. They must feel pretty. If they cut Foggy, they must feel pretty comfortable with that situation out of Dodson. So as the linebacking room's now down to 9, 6 of which will stay in that room. So they'd cut 1 to make room for Kyle Carter, guy who showed some athleticism. I mean, at this point, you never really know what could happen there. I mean, hey, you're one play away or another injury away from like actually seriously making a team. So good for him to jump on this thing and get an opportunity. We'll see him, at camp on Wednesday. So we'll see what's going on there. I'm equally as worried about the tight end room. I thought they tried to address it, 3rd and 7th round picks, as well as a quote unquote expensive tight end, and then also signing blocking tight end for decent money. So they went out and addressed it in 4 ways. And then, really only kept hold over Jason Kroom. So they really decided to swap out a year of Charles Clay to give the money to Tyler Croft. An interesting decision for a guy that's been hurt, spent a lot of his career hurt. And, I mean, really only had 1 decent season. So that was the guy they designated that they wanted, that they fit in the offense. So I'm equally as worried there. Wouldn't be shocked to see, based on these injuries, if that's a position group they make a move at some point. I don't know. I don't consider Kyle Carter, a guy they had on their practice squad in December last year, to be the move. So we'll
He's
see.
got 16 moves in his history of transactions over the last 3 years. So
yeah,
I don't think he's a long-term guy unless he really surprises. You don't really see a lot of receiving tight ends on the move though through the trade market. Occasionally you see a receiver try to help stuff like right now, like during, your Corey Coleman's and, guys who plan out to be 6 receivers. But I think teams really hold on to their tight ends because they're hard to find effective ones.
Right.
If you have one that can really receive and one that can block and receive, like you're doing a really good job at your tight end group.
Yeah, that's for
I
sure.
mean, if you see them all, we definitely tried to address it, but the only way that we were going to address it and actually be successful is if they were healthy and able to work their way into a new offense. And the 2 biggest additions at that position aren't practicing right now. So
yeah, I saw that there's still. I mean, there was like late into free agency and into spring, there were some names on the market that. I mean, you're definitely better than Kyle Carter. So I don't know if they will be entertained. I think that they should be. I don't know what exactly is going to happen at that position. We're like Max Williams. Was he end up picking up? I mean, he's a young tight end who had a lot of promise. I can't remember if anyone actually. He was available like into like late May. So I don't know if he ended up.
It looks like he is an Arizona Cardinal. I can't find a contract.
See him signing in May in Arizona. So I remember there was guys that really didn't. There was the early fury of tight end signings that they got their big money. But I remember Deion Sims being a thing that people thought was going to be a guy still sitting in free agency. That's kind of more what I was thinking. Over a guy like Kyle Carter. He's not by any means a tight end 1, but he's a guy that I remember when he got cut. People thought the Bills would be all over him. I mean, he had an okay year in Miami, a couple okay years in Miami, went to Chicago, did virtually nothing, turned into more of a blocker, but I guess that was more filled by the Lee Smith role. But at some point, like, it just seems like some of these guys have shown athleticism and the ability to be better than just blockers. So I don't know where that line is drawn at that tight end position. Like Jermaine Gresham, for instance, like I feel like he's got to be a better option than Kyle Carter, or no? Or do you not think so?
He might be, but that also might be a guy. I mean, Kyle Carter might be a let's get through a week of practice guy,
Okay.
and before you actually make a move. I mean, they might have been like, we need another tight end in practice tomorrow,
Yeah.
like, or we're not going to be able to run offensive sets. You know, they're getting close um,
But they're
to
carrying
that
like Keith
level.
Tobridge, who's a blocker, back up to Lee Smith. They don't need, especially with Sweeney, he's supposed to be a blocker. I mean, Nate Becker. So it wouldn't just be to replace Kyle Carter, although, obviously that's the name we're using. But I think like Gresham would be a good vet presence, all around player who had 3, 4, 500, 600 yard receiving years. Pretty much, I mean, he was pretty good from 2010 to 2014. Then was more of a role player, but still started a lot of football. I mean, he started a lot of football games, Jason. So,
Yeah, you
um,
just don't know who's shot at this point, who's played for that long.
right.
He was never that much of an athlete to begin with, so it's maybe they're just looking for somebody else, and also like they might have to sign Jermaine Gresham to a decently real veteran contract, not like anything major, but he might have a number that he'll only play for, and if all your guys are healthy, like I don't know that he makes the team. You know, it's great to have as many people competing at a position of weakness, but I don't know if you'd want him making the team over Croft or Kroom or Lee Smith or Knox or Sweeney. You know, he might even look at that situation and be like, "There's still too many guys there. There's going to be,
For me to go. Yeah. Right.
their agents are going to tell them, hey, what are your chances of making the team?" He'd probably be looking at Arizona and be like, well, I still think I'm better than Charles Clay,
Right.
and that might be a bigger thing for him. You know, I don't know how many of these guys are sticking around to be fourth tight ends at this point.
Yeah. Barely making it onto the team. And I think it's a position group to watch. How about, kind of, I think that's a good thing to say. I think it's a position group through camp that hasn't really impressed me. I mean, Knox was okay throughout his, couple days that he practiced. A lot of blocking tight ends in there, and we're going to see a lot of sets where they're going to be used to help block. I think they're in good shape on the blocking front. I think that they're reinforced in the blocking, which is important. It really is. It's important. I don't hate on the blocking tight ends. I think it's not it's not too bad of a position group to have. To
They
blocking tight
also
ends.
might be running three tight ends every so often, which not a lot of teams in the league do, but I believe that they did last year and have already shown in camp so far. So if you're gonna do it, they might as well have those
Yeah,
guys. And
right.
all of them, most of them seem to have some level of blocking ability, even Dawson Knox, um, Sweeney certainly, Lee Smith for sure. So I think that's going to be important for them. I guess it's a wait and see. I'm not saying that they're going to be a disaster. I just think that it's not a good start, and they really need every minute that they can get, and they're not getting those minutes right now. And every practice that goes by that they don't, you're falling a little further behind. I mean, this is as soon as Croft got hurt, I was like, all right, well, he's really not going to be ready to be like a tight end one for the start of the year. He might even be ready to play, but he's not going to be. We're going to be in wait and see mode with him working his way back into shape. I mean, I thought Kyle Rudolph or somebody like that was a good idea, in April, just to make a move while you have some money and get a guy into practices and camp right away who has some talent that still has the ability to be a number one tight end. But it didn't have to be Kyle Rudolph. He just happened to be the person that was at the time talked about as that guy
I feel like
looking for the
Tampa's always
deal.
stashing a few like that. They could end up making a move there. Like I feel like they're always not utilizing like okay tight ends. So I don't know. I don't. Obviously I'm not anticipating a second round pick going out the door for a tight end, but I mean, teams like like a Cameron Brate. Like I don't know. At some point you're like, yeah, OJ Howard's my starting tight end. Maybe I can move from Cameron Brate.
Yeah, they seem to like both those guys. I mean, again, that's one of the fortunate teams they seem to like to just to hold on to having both guys.
Yeah, and then not utilizing them to their fullest potential. And they were the first ones to put a claim in for Jordan Leggett when he was released. And the Bills were too. Actually, the Bills put in a claim for him. Maybe what was that, a month ago now? Maybe when he was released. Right? Yeah, it was about a month ago. It wasn't long ago. So I don't know. Maybe they will move on if they get the right compensation. And as we know, Baltimore has about 4 third-round picks on their roster at any point at that position. So we'll see if there's a move to be made out there with the Nick Boyles, Mark Andrews, Hayden Hurst they just took. So I mean they have a room full of them. So I wouldn't be shocked to see that toward cut day if they designate that to be out there. But I mean, I think Bean really does put 3 or 4 new guys on his roster every September for like every September 1st. And this year, tight end is sticking out to me as I think someone will make the team that's not on the team currently. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Cool.
don't know if it's going to be a big splash, but I mean, that's the position that you would do it in. And I have to imagine that there's going to be somebody that gets released who is better than the guys that are currently slated to make our roster.
Right. And
I would say that.
yeah, I agree with that. And if you get into O line, I mean, we said we would talk about this last show on Thursday after rolling a day. How did that turn out? I mean, we said after Feliciano was getting those right guard snaps, Ford was still in there at right tackle. Which when we were there, Mitch Morse was actually having a rest day. So Long and Feliciano are both in there. Kind of, what's your take on it so far, and what do you think happens in this unit?
Yeah, I mean, they're showing their cards so far. As far as the things that you can tell for sure, I mean, they're definitely trying to give Cody Ford the spot. We'll see if he really struggles. He has struggled on plays so far. I know that he's had plays where Murphy's been beating him, and I believe Lawson or Love, I forget. Lawson had a really good day when we were at camp. I don't know. I forgot which side he was playing on there. I'm trying to think of it right now. Anyways, but they're going to give him the chance. I think they see the right tackle is his best position right now. If he's really a disaster, I don't think they will have any problem trying out Ty Inseki. Um, they seem to prefer Feliciano. Like I'll say, I don't think there's any way that Feliciano gets cut
Yeah,
at
yeah,
this point. I mean, I think he was fairly far off now, but I think not only the fact that they had him in first at right guard, but the fact that they have him instead of Long as the backup center says a lot because Long played center last year for a good
mm,
portion of the year and started at it. And there were rumors that he had a broken hand and still had to snap with it, and Todd Bowles still made him play with the broken hand. But they preferred Feliciano, and you know that they love their versatility guys. And I think they probably felt the same way about Ford too, with his ability to move inside if he's not ready for right tackle and ready for pass rushers on that side. So it is interesting. I mean, more than anything, I think you just see a really deep unit. Spain seems pretty entrenched there at left guard and Dawkins at left tackle. And I probably talked about maybe moving Dawkins more than a lot of other people did just based on what they gave to Inseki, what they had as far as Ford coming in. But that left side, really the left three look fairly set right now. I mean, the good thing is that if anybody gets into preseason time and shows that they can't hold up, they there's people behind them. There's very capable players behind them, and that they spent money on and have investments in. And I don't think they'd feel any problem being like, all right, well, this Spain's didn't play well. We're gonna just see our next options. And I think that's a good thing. I think a real competition is a good thing. I think 5 entrenched starting offensive linemen going into the training camp is a positive, but it's not when 3 of them aren't very good. So, this is a lot better of a situation. I don't think they're going to have to make any additional moves for it. They may even have, their 8 or 9 they're going to try to roll with through the season without even any backup, back end changes. I wouldn't be terribly shocked if they did what they did with Marshall Newhouse last year and maybe you have a player that may have the potential to start or really contribute somewhere and maybe on the back end of your roster starting the season and you can make a trade. Looking at the end like Towler or Waddle or Long or somebody that might not end up starting at that point but would be very valuable for another team because most most NFL starting lines still aren't solid 1 through 5. I could, they traded Marshall Newhouse for like a 6 last year,
yep.
and they got a 6 out of it, like for a guy that was not particularly important to a bad offensive line. I could see him making those sneaky moves again and just picking up an extra pick somewhere. Um, and I think that's not an awful idea this year because they've afforded the ability to do that because they really addressed the offensive line in a really meaningful way with guys who have starting experience. And now I think they have a good enough roster of linemen. Now it's just about finding the best combination. And uh, it's already like they're rotating less than I thought they would. I thought that we'd
Yeah,
probably
they
get a
are.
rotation at right guard and right tackle, and they've messed with right guard a little bit. They've sat Morse, but they're not just changing it every single day. I think we could pretty much name what it's going to be going into the first preseason game with pretty good certainty.
Yeah, Feliciano has kind of entrenched himself with that center versatility. They'd rather him than Long. I mean, Long grades out a lot better at guard.
Hmm.
And even Jets people would say he was pretty good at guard, and he's a good guard, and kind of what we signed him for. But as center, yeah, he was having issues. As you can tell, he's really not moving from right guard much. So Feliciano, I think, has the upper hand. But maybe Long beats him out, and Feliciano proves to be more versatile. And you have an Nseki Feliciano active game day backups in there that, quite frankly, could go in and not be much of a downgrade to kind of to who their starters are. So that's great to have. Like if those seven and you get an injury, you're not like, oh man, we just lost our best defensive lineman. Now Ty Nseki's going to go in there and be probably today just as good as Cody Ford was. So
Yeah, we're not playing Colin Brown
right,
or you know
we don't take
any
out a
any backup lineman that we've had in the last 5 years, really.
we don't take out a poor lineman to put in a really bad one, or an okay lineman to put in a poor one. We're actually
Yeah.
putting in a guy that's very equal to the guy that's starting, just maybe a smidgen lower on the totem pole. But I think I think it's an entrenched top seven though, Jason. I think Waddle is there, um, maybe is the
Yeah, I
eighth or
think
ninth guy, and
Waddle and
White Teller.
Teller
Yeah,
are really probably have a decent chance of making the team guys, and depending on the numbers, that'll
and
probably be
injuries. Yeah.
that. And I think Searles probably cleared it up even more because his biggest thing was the versatility.
Yeah, he was a sneaky play to make in the top nine, and they'll probably PUP him, Jason. He'll be on. Watch it. He's going to be on this team. I think he's going to play, or he's going to be on the roster at some point this year. They're going to take him off of PUP, and he's going to play. So it's a good way for them to keep him for 6 weeks to make sure they don't have any injuries, and if they do, entrench him right away as a backup offensive lineman. So they'll get sneaky there, but I mean, at least the thing I can say is at least you're going to have competition in the second and third units, and we're not playing these undrafted free agent guys that are going to get their skill players killed. I think that's as we transition into, the heating up position battles that we're kind of already talking about. But if you have a guy, an offensive line, we've seen it in Buffalo as soon as last year, where your third and second and third units can't protect the quarterback or running back or receivers. You just can't tell anything in preseason games because the offensive line's so bad. You have guys doing 360s in the backfield to try to make a play and fumbling, and it just doesn't bring out the best. But now you're going to have basically the Bill starting offensive line at unit last year playing backup. I mean, you're going to see Teller, Bodine, obviously you're going to have Nseki in there if he's not in the starting unit at that point. So in the preseason games, you're really going to have a solid, I mean, at least for the twos, you're going to have a solid bat. Connor McDermott will be in there, the Vlad Ducasses of the world, like Bodigers of the world, Waddell's. I mean, Jason, you're going to have a decent second and third unit to actually see what Barkley can do with his receivers, and Tyree Jackson as well is not going to play within a terrible offensive line. So I think that really helps the position battles, and the David Sills and Duke Williams, Isaiah McKenzie's, Victor Bolden's, or I guess Ray McLeod. Those guys are going to have an ample opportunity rather than really bad quarterback, really bad offensive line. Let's just punt this game because we can't get a thing out of it. But they're going to bring in an offensive line that's going to be interesting to watch. So I think that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most, is trotting out the number 2 unit and maybe even a guy or two on it that will make another team. I think that the Bills will have an offensive lineman picked up by another team because I think that there's some solid talent behind the starting five, and they're deep there, and they did that on purpose. And they're still, I mean, if they see a guy out there, they're still doing it, like Isaac Asiata. I mean, that's another guy that they just signed, a guard. Didn't really need him at all. I don't really see where he fits in. DeAndre Wesley, they claimed. So they have some names there that have made other teams.
Yeah.
So I think they're right now on our fourth unit. I mean, they have made other football teams, and they're right now on the fourth unit. The Chiefs signed Boetger last year when we waived him out of camp. Another guy who's made another team. We claimed him right back. Obviously Waddell's made other teams. Ducos has been in the league. Bodine's been in the league. I mean, these are guys that are on the chopping block. I can't even see any of them making it right now. And they've
No.
played on other teams, and they're probably in the third unit. A lot of them are on the third unit, not even the second. So we're going to have some, Tyree Jackson's going to have an ample opportunity with these guys. And so is, Matt Barkley's on the team, but, Tyree Jackson's going to have ample opportunity to play with a decent offensive line for the third unit. And have like okay receiving ability with Duke Williams, Isaiah McKenzie. So I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be really fun to watch some of the later quarters for once because of the reasons of that we're saying here. I'm interested in the offense. I think they've taken a big step forward. I think they're going to run some real stuff. Some 12 personnel. They're going to have some good blocking in there. But kind of lastly is the running back room. And I wanted to get into the leading and the leading carries for 2019. Are you going with LaShawn McCoy? Are you going with Single? We haven't really talked about it too much here. We've brought it up, but what's the plan at running back? Who's taking the carries in 2019?
I mean, I think they're going to give LaShawn McCoy every opportunity to do it.
Okay.
I think if he struggles, I think that you'd see Singletary get number one sort of carries before Frank Gore. I think just because Singletary's looked so good in camp, I think he's looked very shifty. He really hasn't given anybody an on-field reason why not to to be into him. I mean, he was a massively productive player at Florida Atlantic. Scored a ton of touchdowns there. People, soured on him because he had a very, very bad combine in just about every way, agility, your jumps, everything else. Didn't run particularly fast. He played at a relatively small school. I mean, a relatively successful small school, but there's a reason they have doubts, and that's probably what made him a third rounder instead of a second round pick. And he's looked good in camp so far. It's not
He's been the best
terribly.
rookie in the camp so far, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not terribly easy to see it without people, really tackling and only having a couple of days of pads. But he does look as advertised as far as his shiftiness and his ability to see holes, be able to stretch the play out. I'm really interested in seeing him get significant carries in the preseason. And, I got behind that offensive line that should be capable enough against second units and third units in preseason. So that's going to be exciting to see. I honestly think that McCoy's going to be the starter. I think Gore probably spells whoever is the person as running back one. And Singletary would probably get that opportunity if McCoy was hurt, if he got bounced out of a game, if he's just completely ineffective, which isn't something that I'm predicting. I mean, I think the real competition here is Yeldon versus Norris Perry. I had
Oh, you
seen that.
stole my question. I was going to say straight up Yeldon or Norris Perry. I was going to say.
Well, I'm not going to answer it yet, but I'll just say, so we'll just get into that. I mean, Perry's playing some second team running back right now in practice. Yeldon is a guy that I'd like to make the team because I think that he provides a receiving threat that they really haven't rostered other than McCoy in a couple of years. I mean, they've been rostering a lot of special teams guy, which is what Perry is, but I think that if he's capable in the offense, they clearly think that he's an excellent special teams player. So that'll be interesting. And he's a bigger guy, but I think it's between those two, and then you still have the looming Patrick DeMarco, who on the special teams. I'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see how maybe Perry affects DeMarco's roster spot or how he affects Yeldon's roster spot. I would guess that I think four guys between running backs and fullbacks make the team. Um, four running backs and then
And one
either
fullback, right?
and either your Perry or DeMarco. I think. I think five between the two positions is probably it. I don't think you
Yeah, and I
can get
think that
six. I've seen projections that have six and have figured out a way to make the numbers work. I just I think Yeldon, if he's significantly better as a running back than Perry, I would keep Yeldon. And you have linebackers and safeties that can make that role. I know Saron Neal's been getting a lot of time as a gunner, um, and they've been doing a lot of different combinations in terms of Mo Alexander's and
All
doing a
the
little
backup
less,
linebackers, all
doing
of
a
them.
little, yeah. Mo Alexander, Corey Thompson, switching Lacey in and out. They're going to have a lot of ways to do that, and I don't necessarily think keeping a sixth running back slash fullback just to do that job is it's not the sexiest option, but I'm not sure that it's also just the smartest one. I think you could probably get by without him, especially because I still think that Yeldon has something in the tank and offensively gives you something that the other running backs really don't if he's working at full steam.
Yeah.
So
And Kirk Coleman's a rock solid lock too because of his special teams ability, as well as being a pretty good third safety. So, I mean, there's a lot there. Voshan Joseph, was kind of drafted to be in there, and they like Corey Thompson a lot, and there's names in there that I don't need to waste. A Sonoris Perry. I mean, he's been, I guess, one of the better special teamers. So, I mean, hey, maybe he does something in teams that is just that good that they're going to use a roster spot on him. I mean, I pretty much think that would all but lock out TJ Yeldon. I don't even know what the point of him signing would be. But it all takes one play where LaShawn McCoy or Frank Gore get hurt. Really takes one play. I mean, the question kind of I had would be, is Singletary going to even get those carries, or is he going to be a lock kind of by week 3, where you're not even going to see him week 4? Does he even need to? Is he even going to carry the load? Because why even risk it? Do you think he's going to do enough?
I I don't know. It's hard to predict what performance is going to be. I think if he shows to be better than McCoy or Gore, yeah, I think you need to put him on the field. But if those guys are still ahead of him and Singletary needs a little bit of time, like they're not going to probably dress him because Yeldon's still going to give you more as a catching threat, and Perry would give you more as a special teamer. You can't really you can't have a guy on the active roster as your third running back who does nothing else. That isn't either your best pass receiver, isn't your best pass blocker, or doesn't play a significant amount of special teams. So it's just going to come down to if he proves to be one of the top two running backs, yeah, he's going to play. I think he's got a decent chance of it. I think he's got a good chance of looking good in the preseason. He's getting rave reviews. He passed the eye test from these eyes, so uh, I think that is very possible. I think it's
Right.
very possible that he's a talented enough running back to beat a couple guys who are past 30. But I think if he's not quite there, or even if it's a tie, I think he could be left off of some active rosters for at least the time being. I honestly, it's almost like a complete hypothetical because I don't see any way that McCoy and Gore go both play 16 games. Like that just seems impossible. So like you're gonna end up seeing him eventually, but there is a chance that at the start of the year, maybe he's somebody that you ramp up going on after the first few games. There's a stretch in the season that's like after a bye week with, there's 3 straight home games in November. There's good places to give a guy his debut or give a guy his first big reps in the season. So that might be the way to do it rather than starting on the road for 2 games in a row.
Right.
Uh, it'll be interesting, but I do think that they're fair enough that it'll be somewhat performance and play based. And if he really is providing something more than those guys, the much older veteran players in terms of burst and a change of pace, then I don't see any reason why they would leave him out.
Right. And I mean, as long as it passes your eyes too, like that's like the most important part, right? If he has got to pass your eyes, and he did.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So
Yeah, he's a different looking running back than the other guys out there. Not that anybody looked terrible. I mean, Frank Gore still looked like an athlete. He looked good for his age, especially. But the shift that Singletary gives you is a lot different, and it's a lot different than a lot of the guys out there. Maybe I wasn't paying that much attention, but I was surprised to see how big Sonaris Perry was. He's a bigger dude, 6 foot tall.
makes sense
Marcus
for teams.
Murphy's yeah, Marcus Murphy's a bigger dude. Uh, Yeldon is a tall running back. He's kind of skinny and upright, but he's a taller running back. Singletary's a small dude who's what do they use? Your water bug, your jitter bug, whatever they call it.
Yep.
Everybody's got a different word for it. I mean, he's got a little bit of that in him, but he's also a guy that carried the ball like a ton of times in college. So he knows how to handle, a full workload. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
I'm super
preseason
interested in what they do.
preseason's going to be fun at running back as well. So add that into the mix of having guys like Marcus Murphy, who was usually your maybe second team guy, was getting making the team. Now he's kind of pushed to the third team, and you're seeing guys like Singletary and Yeldon in there into games. It might be interesting to see how they play. And
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because you're going to see a lot of them because I cannot imagine McCoy and Gore carrying the ball more than a
no,
player or two a game in
no,
preseason.
I think
There's no
Yeldon's
way it
going to
would be
take care of
irresponsible. Yeah.
preseason football. I think that's it's going to be a complete. Everyone's like convinced that he's like on the bubble on the way out, but he's going to have a real field day to be a safety valve in the passing game. I mean, he's used to playing against, really good third down teams and being a good safety valve in Jacksonville. I think you're going to see a good version of him against second teamers, maybe even third in some cases, and he's going to be able to know what he's going to do against guys maybe not making a team. So let's see if that story changes when he proves to have some value in the receiving game and third down blocking, as well as running the football. So he's the guy I'm still focusing on the most. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. The guy doesn't make this roster. I think he can present a lot of different, and this is with healthy players. He can present a lot of different great things. And I still think when you said, he has to pass these eyes. I mean, it kind of reminded me of that song, these eyes, da, 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 cry every night. I mean, I had to think
It's
about
the
that.
Guess Who. Yeah.
Yeah, for at least
Also
90
featured in
seconds.
Superbad.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
It is a catchy song.
Yeah, Michael Cera.
I
Um,
can't sing. I can
I-
sing the Doug theme song, but uh, I'll leave
which
that to you.
which is potentially on the fold. We are working on some of our drops that we're going to use in our segment names and other things that are coming up with. So watch out for that on this show with new drops and new things happening.
Production will
So,
continue to improve.
so who has the most carries to wrap it all up? Who has the most carries in 2019?
LaShawn McCoy.
Okay, so LaShawn McCoy will stay on the roster with the most carries. And we'll see how that turns out. Question and answers, Jason, to kind of get this thing capped off. William has a question. He wants to know about the offensive line and when they signed Spencer Long, I thought he was not a bad depth guy. He can play center and an okay backup. I don't understand him trying him as a starter. Can't Nseki play guard at least better than Long? Seems like names to pencil in to start. So what's your opinion on Nseki to guard, it looks like, was his question. And doesn't seem to be too keen on Spencer Long, but more of a depth guy.
I mean, my idea was always that earlier was that you play Nseki at tackle and you move Dawkins inside because Dawkins was a little poor last year. It was shaky at best. He was a guy that a lot of people projected at guard, and Nseki played phenomenal, off the bench, and he sort of is a spot starter for Washington at both positions, at left and right tackle. I think playing his best stuff at left tackle. I thought that was worth a shot and just try to squeeze the best years out of a guy who's I mean, he has to be in his prime right now. I mean, Long right now doesn't seem like he's slated to start at guard. I mean, it looks like
Right now,
Feliciano's.
exactly. That was going to be my point. I think William, you're forgetting Feliciano is actually the starter there, and Long is going to be in that depth role with Nseki. But
Yeah,
these
I
are
mean, I'm not gonna for sure say that, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely the way it looks to line up, which then he's playing where you kind of want him to play.
yep. And Nseki's unfortunately going to be your swing guy, but once again, Long and Nseki are some really good depth. Who've started a lot of games, have been pretty good in this league. So much better. Both of them would have started on last year's line, so much better improvement there for your backup guys on active game day roster. Brett wants to know Trent Murphy's over under sacks this year, and what day does Ed Oliver start with the ones, and do we ever look back?
Oh, I mean, I think Ed Oliver is going to be the one with the ones when the season starts for
Okay.
real. Just to start with that, I think he's so dynamic. I think that they might be either A, making him earn it, or B, maybe trying out having him as a situational player that isn't going to be. I mean, I don't know that he's a three down D tackle whether he starts or not this year, but I think maybe they're trying to find what the right situation is to maximally use him to his best abilities, and that may be only on pass rushing downs. They may take him off of first down, but I do think that he's such a dynamic presence. And in a way, I mean, they had Kyle Williams on a lot of those downs that I feel like Ed Oliver's could probably be an improvement on for end of career Kyle Williams by
Yeah,
then.
yeah. I'm going preseason week 2 for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to get enough looks and whatever. I think he's. I mean, I'm going to take a guess and say that he's a game day guy, anyways. You might not see everything that you're going to see out of him in practice, but when you get him on the field and you see his nose for the ball and really just his innate ability to disrupt plays, I think you're going to see a gamer, and I think he's going to be really hard to hold off of the field, uh, especially behind Jordan Phillips, who is a league average defense tackle. And
Trent
so,
Murphy's over under on sacks.
I mean, if he got over, I'd probably be happy if he got over 6.5.
Okay, six and
If
a
he
half.
had, I think that a 7 or 8 sack season's probably likely. I've just never seen him as a super dynamic guy. I think that he's going to benefit a little bit from Jerry Hughes on the other side, creating havoc. Obviously, Oliver, he might really get some stuff pushed his way, and he really holds on the point of attack pretty well. He is quick enough for his size, but I don't know, maybe I haven't watched closely enough, but it hasn't. I don't know if he has the dynamic moves that make him your best pass rusher without the benefit of other guys really helping out. But I think that he's solid there. I also think that it might be affected a little bit because I do think that there's going to be a solid rotation with Shaq Lawson in there. He looks like he's practicing well and in shape despite not getting up the entire mountain in Bills Embedded. But I
That's right.
still think that he looks like he's in shape. He looks like he has a good mindset. The coaching staff seems to be more positive about him. The fact that he's still on the team and just about every player preceding this regime is off the team, that they kept him, is probably a good sign, even though I did go into preseason saying the same thing about Adolphus Washington. Uh, was that last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was last year. I was like, I guess it is pretty telling that Adolphus Washington's still on this team. Maybe he's not the bust that we thought, and he's really got some positive qualities, and then he just like got released immediately. So we'll see about that, but they seem to be positive on Lawson. I do think that he's going to be moving in and out situationally with Murphy, which is going to take some playing time. But I think a solid 7 or 8 sack season would be. I don't know if it's a fulfillment of his entire contract, because I would say last season was you would say you got less than what his value was, but I do think that he would still be a valuable part of the roster. And
Okay.
then 7 sacks probably makes a big decision for you next year in reality.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
I I have an 8 number in my head, so I'm going with 8 on that question. I think he can hit 8. I think he was good in stretches, and he's been by all counts one of the best defensive linemen this year. So 8, with Lawson getting plenty of time. Those guys rotate so much that he'll get plenty of time as well. How has Zay Jones looked in camp? I only ever hear about Brown and Beasley, and I can't tell if it's because they're new or if it's because there are 2 best players. Thoughts on Zay Jones? He's very much so entrenched in the top 3. Kind of came out early, stretching out his, I think it was his groin or his leg when we were at camp. So didn't play in teams, but you saw a little bit of Cam Phillips. What do you think about that question?
Cam Phillips was in the question too,
No,
or
I'm
no,
saying,
just say Jones.
yeah, just Zay Jones.
Is it? Yeah, I wish I had seen more of him because he really didn't play in the team session. You actually saw We saw a lot of Nick Easley at slot. There was a lot of Ray McLeod that day. Obviously, you had your John Brown and Cole Beasley. I mean, as far as the first part of the question, I think we're hearing a lot of John Brown and Cole Beasley because they've been our best 2 receivers so far in camp. I think we're hearing a little bit about Robert Foster because he hasn't been one of the best receivers at camp so far.
Right.
And those are all pretty notable developments because I think, and I'm a Robert Foster, eventually wide receiver 1 guy, or I was all offseason. And it wasn't really anything against John Brown. I just thought that the immense physical talents and the way Robert Foster put it together was going to make him really force his way into significant playing time as a deep threat. And then you add that with, the rapport he had with Josh Allen and just the type of quarterback that Josh Allen was. I really thought that he was going to be big. So to answer that question, I didn't go to the first 3 days of training camp. The day that I went to, Zay Jones was very limited. We haven't heard a ton of reports about him showing out immensely. And I think that's still a question to be had, is how he really fits in as an outside receiver, because he's always played outside receiver, but I felt like some of the plays that he made really made him. It would have been advantageous to maybe make him a slot receiver. I might have been alone on that one. I know there are some people that agree with that, but certainly Cole Beasley's filling that role, and he's used to it, and he's gonna do a better job at it than Zay Jones did. So I'll be interested to see how he uses. He is technically a non-Smurf. I think he's like a solid 6'1", which is actually going to come out to be a reasonably big receiver in this offense, unless we, keep Duke Williams and David Sills. Like, he's going to be one of the bigger receivers on the team.
He did call us a Smurfs, which still Isaiah McKenzie would be on that, which still I think he still has a much better chance to make the team than a lot of people are giving credit for out of that unit too. So I don't think it's for sure Ray McLeod. I think McKenzie had the job over him at points last year. So we're going to see how that turns out. As he's just kind of like he's a good gamer too. He's more of a gamer than clearly isn't at the best of practices, but we'll see how that changes here. Neither is Robert Foster, so we'll see how that changes here in that room coming up shortly. But in terms of offensive, Sean wants to know in terms of offensive structure and design for other top teams in the league, where does it look like Dable is headed for year 2?
Yeah, I think that we're going to see certainly the passing percentages go up. I think you're going to see the receivers on the field go up. I think you're going to see, I was talking about earlier about the concepts of having the underneath receiver and a safety valve. And I felt like, just personnel-wise, you were really beholden to the types of routes that Kelvin Benjamin could run or, also run in effectively. Those are the type of routes, especially when they're not a particularly good receiver, that wasn't really going and getting it. That doesn't help a young quarterback at all. And you see a guy like Beasley who's just, rubs his cornerback off on somebody else, and suddenly he's wide open in the flat, and he's scooting around and getting yards after catch. And I think that's going to be incredibly important. And I think in general, even though our biggest gainers were those Robert Foster plays, those bombs. Really the only player that was doing anything underneath was Zay Jones, and I think now we have more players that can ease the pressure off a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how much power run stuff stays into the offense. Certainly, we have the running backs to do that, and even the linemen to do that to a certain point. But in the end, you do have to. The trends in the NFL are trends for a reason, and I think if we can move something closer to what Kansas City does or what the Rams do, there's a reason that they're really successful, and it's not just the quarterbacks; it's really well-designed schemes, and so that's the hope.
Yep, and Gordo wants to know: are the Bills running traditional O-line set with a pocket, or are they doing what you thought they might with less of a pocket and the tackles being on an island? So do you think they're going to run a traditional? Do you think Bobby Johnson's going to run more of a traditional pocket, or do you think he's going to pop those 2 tackles out on an island?
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't tell for sure. In the practice that I saw, mostly because Cody Ford was missing guys. I mean, it looked like a pocket to me, but
it looks still pretty traditional to me as well. But I think that they're going to try to maybe at some point practice that where they're popping out those tackles on an island and kind of keeping those defensive ends at bay out wide. So we're going to see how that turns out. But to me, at least early on in camp, it looks like they're keeping them in the pocket as one. But I think they've had a little bit of struggle at both tackle spots right now, especially with the penetration of defensive end. So we'll see that more probably in preseason, what the offensive line scheme is going to be from Bobby Johnson. And I'm sure Eric will cover that as well. Last question from Sean. Do we have the look of a modern offense? We kind of already touched on that. Or are we running old school first? And then non-Oliver defensive tackle. How are Phillips and Phillips doing? and how's Phillips doing as a starter with Starr? So what are your takes on the Phillips brothers? And do you think we're going to be run first?
The Philippi look fine, from what I've seen so
Philippi?
far. But I don't. I guess I didn't specifically watch Jordan Phillips in practice. I know Harrison Phillips has looked pretty decent. It's hard to tell right now. Pads aren't on, like haven't been on for a couple days, and guys aren't tackling. Those are going to be a preseason sort of deals. As far as athletically, they look fine. Nobody was noticeably bad. They seem to work together quite a bit. I saw Star on the sideline for a decent portion of the team practice that I saw, and maybe that's something that they'll think about, or maybe like a Harrison Phillips, Ed Oliver, sort of a smaller version of both of those players duo on pass rushing downs. That would be a cool thing to utilize. So we'll see. I mean, it is tough. I usually check to see if guys are just in shape and sort of where they need to be in this stage of camp. We got a decent look at it at the practice that we went to with the pads, but I think overall, you're not going to see that true physicality until things really start going on the offensive line.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
I don't know if I missed something.
Run first, I
Modern
think, is the final.
offenses. Yeah, I think we're going to throw the ball more. I think that you have to, and
Yeah.
I think that might even end up being our strength on this team over the run game, just in the way that we're going to be able to pick up yards in chunks. And if Allen can make significant strides throwing the ball underneath and throwing those screens, he still looks wild throwing those screens sometimes. He doesn't know how to get the right arc or velocity on it quite yet. That's something that I think he could really, really improve on. And also, I mean, those just should be automatic, and that's a big part of that pass completion percentage that people talk about so much. You only have to pick up a few of those to raise up your percentage quite a bit. So those are going to be things I'm going to look to watch, and it'll be interesting to see if Elam plays with a Yeldon or even with a Singletary, where maybe they can get something going out of the backfield in the screen game. I think that's a really easy way to pick up yards and something that we really hadn't done a ton because we really didn't have guys behind McCoy that could do that. We really didn't have the blocking to set stuff up like that. And McCoy was just spending a lot of time off the field where maybe we weren't able to utilize that part of the game as much as that we should. But, a lot of what Alabama had run was a major imbalance between the skill that they had of the guys throwing and the guys receiving it, and then having like three NFL running backs and five NFL offensive linemen, and that just being the very obvious way of doing things. Alabama, even in the personnel since that time 2 years ago, has drastically changed, where they have the top quarterback and three NFL receivers at least, probably four. So that they're even that's a team that's completely changed at the way that they play football just due to the personnel. And I do think that even later in the season, Dable had switched, as his personnel had gotten healthier, as he had gotten his McKenzies in, as he had gotten Foster back, the way that they played the offense really did change. So I do trust that he's creative enough to have a proper utilization of the things that he has in front of him. Right now, he's just got more team speed at wide receiver at this point, and he's going to start to use that rather than your Kelvin Benjamin and Andre Holmes duo. You can't do anything with that. You got to run the ball.
Yeah, and finally, to wrap it up, I saw a tweet that said the Bills are one of the deepest teams in the NFL. So I think that that's pretty cool. That where we still don't know how high the top end talent is. A lot of we did have some viewers from national media say that we are one of the top end depth teams in the NFL. So we'll see if that plays out as teams. We have an easy start to the schedule, and then as teams face injuries, and they already have, kind of how that depth plays out for the team. But yeah, I mean, they're gone are the days of Andre Holmes, your number 3 receiver, and a lot of running Marcus Murphy. There's a lot of the offensive lines. Some of these guys that, quite frankly, were ones and twos are now not making the roster. So I think it's a really good depth team. I think it could come together the second half of the season, and I think that schedule's played out perfectly for a run. So we will see exactly how this thing shakes out. But I mean, it's been a crazy show here on the Kevin and Jason show presented by Cover One. As always, check out the premium content that Eric and to the team release. Really good stuff over there in the Cover One Buffalo show as well. Good stuff going on. So you can subscribe to the premium content and get all that great content, be able to compete in fantasy, get the pushing notifications to the app. There are some great perks to that. So go check out Cover One Premium when you get a chance. But Jason, I mean, man, I think we had a great conversation about the first 4 days of camp, and we're coming back at you on Thursday with some more camp. Although it'll be just Thursday, I believe, because they're off. Well, they're off Monday, Tuesday, so we'll have Wednesday, Thursday of camp. So we'll bring that at you. Any other news and nuggets are going to come at you with it. But from the Kevin and Jason show, I'm Kevin, and that's Jason.
Thanks, guys.